Emma Matthews froze in disbelief as the massive white stallion pounded desperately at her cabin door. During the raging blizzard, its pleading eyes and injured foal revealing an intelligence that defied everything she knew about wild animals. The decision she made in the next 30 seconds would not only challenge federal law but place her directly in the crosshairs of a ruthless corporation willing to kill for the genetic secrets these extraordinary creatures harbored. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The wind howled through the towering pines as Emma Matthews pulled her Forest Service jacket tighter around her body. Another blizzard was approaching, and the weather report suggested it would be the worst one of the season. As the newest ranger assigned to the Northern Ridge Wildlife Preserve, Emma had volunteered to stay at the remote outpost cabin during the winter months. Most of her colleagues had families to return to in the valley below, but Emma had always found peace in solitude, preferring the company of trees and wildlife to the complications of city life. The cabin was simple but sturdy, built decades ago by the first rangers who had established the preserve. Its log walls had weathered countless storms, and the small wood stove kept the interior surprisingly cozy despite the sub-zero temperatures outside. Emma had stocked up on supplies during her last trip to town 2 weeks ago, preparing for the isolation that came with winter storms in the mountains. As she finished chopping extra firewood, her radio crackled with static. It was Jerry, her supervisor from the main station 30 miles downslope. "Emma, you reading me? That system's intensifying. They're saying we could get 3 feet by morning, with winds up to 60 miles per hour. You sure you don't want to come down while you still can?" Emma glanced at the darkening sky. The storm clouds were rolling in faster than expected, heavy with snow and promise of isolation. "I'm good, Jerry. I've got everything I need here. Besides, someone needs to keep an eye on the wildlife. We've had reports of poachers near the eastern boundary." "Always the dedicated one," Jerry chuckled. "Just stay safe up there. Radio checks every 6 hours, understood? First sign of trouble, I'll send the snow team." "Understood. I'll be fine, don't worry." After signing off, Emma finished securing the cabin's exterior. The temperature was dropping rapidly, and the first snowflakes were beginning to fall. Large, wet flakes that clung to her eyelashes and melted on her cheeks. She made one final check of the small stable attached to the cabin. Though she hadn't brought a horse with her this rotation, the structure would provide additional insulation against the coming storm. By nightfall, the blizzard had arrived in full force. Wind rattled the cabin's windows as snow piled against its walls. Emma sat by the wood stove reviewing her wildlife observation logs while sipping hot tea. The preserve was home to a variety of animals: mule deer, elk, black bears, though they'd be hibernating now, and the occasional mountain lion. One entry in particular caught her attention: a report from a hiker last summer about seeing wild horses in the high meadows. Wild horses were unusual in this region. Emma had heard rumors of a small herd that had escaped from a ranch during a wildfire years ago, but she'd never encountered them herself. According to local legend, they were led by a magnificent white stallion that stood taller than any domestic horse. Most of her colleagues dismissed these stories as exaggerations, but the entry made her wonder. Shortly after midnight, as the storm reached its peak, Emma was startled awake by a sound that cut through the howling wind. A high-pitched whinny, followed by persistent thumping against the cabin's outer wall. At first, she thought it might be a tree branch breaking under the weight of snow, but the rhythm was too deliberate. Grabbing her flashlight and service pistol, a precaution against predators and the mentioned poachers, Emma cautiously approached the cabin door. The thumping continued, more urgent now. Taking a deep breath, she cracked the door open, immediately feeling the force of the wind trying to push it wider. What she saw made her gasp. Standing in the swirling snow, illuminated by her flashlight beam, was the largest horse Emma had ever seen. Its coat was pure white, almost glowing against the darkness of the storm. Behind it, partially sheltered by the stallion's massive body, stood a smaller horse, a foal also white, trembling visibly in the cold. The stallion's eyes reflected the light, revealing an intelligence that seemed almost human. It pawed at the ground again, the source of the thumping she'd heard. Emma stood frozen, her mind racing. Wild horses approaching a human dwelling during a storm was unprecedented behavior. These animals should be seeking natural shelter, not coming to a cabin. Yet here they were, and the stallion was deliberately getting her attention. As she hesitated, the foal stumbled slightly, and Emma noticed it was favoring its right front leg. The injury wasn't immediately visible through the swirling snow, but the animal's distress was obvious. The stallion whinnied again, its breath forming clouds in the freezing air, and took a step toward Emma. There was no aggression in the movement. If anything, it seemed like a plea. "You want to come in?" Emma whispered, though she knew the horse couldn't understand her words. Yet the stallion bobbed its head as if in response, then turned to look at the foal with what could only be described as concern. Emma made a quick decision. The stable adjoining the cabin was empty and could provide shelter for the animals until the storm passed. Opening the door wider, she stepped aside and gestured toward the stable entrance. To her amazement, the stallion seemed to understand, gently nudging the foal forward toward the offered shelter. The next few minutes were surreal. Emma watched as the magnificent horse guided its young companion into the stable, moving with a deliberate care that belied its wild nature. Once inside, Emma quickly closed the door behind them and turned on the small battery-powered lantern hanging from the ceiling beam. In the improved light, she could now see what had driven these wild animals to seek human help. The foal's leg had a deep gash just above the knee, crusted with dried blood and ice. The wound wasn't fresh, perhaps a day or two old, but in this weather, without treatment, infection would be inevitable. The stallion stood protectively next to the foal, but made no move to prevent Emma from approaching. "Let me help," Emma said softly, moving slowly to avoid startling the animals. She reached out a hand, allowing the stallion to catch her scent. The massive horse sniffed her fingers, then, in a gesture that took her breath away, gently pressed its muzzle against her palm. Permission granted. Emma worked quickly, gathering her first aid supplies from the cabin. As a ranger, she had basic veterinary training for wildlife emergencies, though she'd never treated a horse before. The foal was understandably frightened, but the stallion's presence seemed to keep it calm. Whenever the young horse flinched, the stallion would make a soft, nickering sound that immediately soothed it. As Emma cleaned and bandaged the wound, she couldn't help but marvel at the situation. These weren't domesticated animals accustomed to human handling. These were wild creatures that should fear human contact. Yet here they were, trusting her in their moment of need. "There you go, little one," she murmured as she finished securing the bandage. "It's not perfect, but it should help." Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the small stable, a strange peace had settled. Emma brought fresh water and some oats she kept for emergencies, placing them within reach of the horses. The stallion drank deeply, while the foal lay down on the clean straw, visibly exhausted. Emma sat on a small stool, watching the pair with wonder. The stallion remained standing, its massive frame dwarfing the space, yet there was a gentleness to its presence that contradicted everything she knew about wild horses. As the night deepened, Emma found herself talking to them, sharing stories of her life and why she'd chosen this solitary existence in the mountains. "I guess we're all just looking for safe harbor sometimes," she said, not feeling foolish at all for conversing with the animals. The stallion's ears flicked toward her voice, its dark eyes reflecting the lantern light as it watched her with what seemed like understanding. Little did Emma know that this unexpected midnight encounter would change not only her life, but the future of the preserve itself. Dawn arrived with eerie stillness, The storm had passed during the early morning hours, leaving behind a transformed landscape. Emma awoke in the stable, surprised to find she'd fallen asleep sitting against the wall, her ranger jacket draped over her like a blanket. She didn't remember covering herself, but exhaustion had clearly overtaken her during her vigil. The white stallion stood in the same protective position beside the foal, though now both animals watched her with alert eyes. In the pale light filtering through the stable's small window, Emma could better appreciate the magnificence of the adult horse. It stood at least 18 hands high, larger than any horse breed she was familiar with powerful shoulders and a flowing mane that seemed almost silver in places. Its eyes, dark and intelligent, followed her movements as she stretched her stiff limbs. "Good morning," she said softly, feeling no awkwardness in addressing them directly after the night they'd shared. "Let's check that leg, shall we?" The foal's wound looked better than expected. The bleeding had stopped completely, and while the injury was serious, there was no sign of infection. Emma changed the bandage, working slowly and narrating her actions to keep both horses calm. The foal was still clearly in pain, but allowed her touch with only minimal fidgeting. "You're being very brave," she told the young horse, gently stroking its neck when she finished. "Both of you are far from what I'd expect from wild horses." After tending to the animals, Emma returned to the cabin to prepare for her morning radio check with Jerry. The snow outside was waist-deep in places, with drifts reaching the windowsills. The world was hushed under its white blanket, sunlight creating diamond-like sparkles across the untouched expanse. "Morning check-in," Emma spoke into the radio. "I'm safe at the cabin. Storm passed around 400 hours. Static crackled before Jerry's voice came through. "Good to hear, Emma. Any damage to report?" Emma hesitated. Protocol required reporting all wildlife encounters, especially unusual ones, but something made her pause. The horses had come to her for help, and she instinctively felt they needed protection. "Nothing significant. Lost power, but the generator's working fine. How's it looking for access?" "Roads won't be cleared for at least 3 days. You're on your own up there for a while. Any concerns?" "None," Emma replied, perhaps too quickly. "I've got plenty of supplies." After signing off, Emma stood by the window, contemplating her decision to withhold information about the horses. In her 4 years as a ranger, she'd never broken protocol. But these weren't ordinary circumstances, and something about the stallion's intelligent gaze made her feel the animals had deliberately sought sanctuary. Gathering some supplies, including additional bandages, antiseptic, and her veterinary reference manual, Emma returned to the stable. The stallion had moved to the water bucket and was drinking while the foal remained resting on the straw. Both lifted their heads at her entrance. "I need to give you names," Emma said, setting down her supplies. "Can't keep calling you horse and baby horse." The stallion shook its magnificent head, sending its mane rippling across its powerful neck. "You," Emma said, pointing to the white giant. "I'm calling you Phantom." "Seems fitting for a horse that appears out of a blizzard like a ghost." The stallion, Phantom, snorted softly, almost as if in approval. "And you," she continued, kneeling beside the foal, "you're Luna, because you're as white as moonlight." The day passed quickly as Emma divided her time between ranger duties and caring for her unexpected guests. She documented weather readings, checked emergency communications equipment, and made detailed notes of wildlife signs visible from the cabin. Occasionally, she caught herself staring at Phantom, still amazed by the horse's presence. By late afternoon, Emma faced a decision. The stable, while adequate for temporary shelter, wasn't properly equipped for long-term equine residence. The foal's injury needed more than basic first aid, but the nearest veterinarian was in the town beyond the ranger station, unreachable until the roads cleared. As Emma considered her options, Phantom suddenly became alert, ears pricked forward toward the cabin door. Seconds later, Emma heard what had captured the stallion's attention. the distant sound of an engine straining through snow. Hurrying outside, she spotted a snowmobile cresting the ridge about half a mile away. Through her binoculars, she recognized Mike Tanner, one of the preserve's maintenance workers, expertly navigating the difficult terrain. Emma's heart raced. She hadn't expected anyone to reach the outpost so soon after the storm. Mike would undoubtedly need to check the stable, and there would be questions she couldn't easily answer about why she was harboring wild horses. Making a quick decision, Emma hurried back to the stable. "Someone's coming," she told the horses, feeling slightly foolish but continuing anyway. "I don't know if I can explain you two. Phantom, can you and Luna manage outside for a little while? There's a sheltered area behind the cabin." To her astonishment, Phantom seemed to understand. The massive horse nudged the foal gently, encouraging it to stand. Emma opened the back door of the stable, revealing a small fenced area partially protected by the cabin's overhang. The snow there was much shallower due to the wind patterns during the storm. With surprising gentleness, Phantom guided Luna through the door. Emma quickly provided some hay in the sheltered corner, then returned to the main cabin just as Mike's snowmobile came to a stop outside. "Emma, good to see you survived," Mike called out, pulling off his helmet. "Jerry sent me to check on you and drop some supplies. That was some storm, huh?" "Thanks for making the trip," Emma replied, trying to appear casual while keeping her body positioned to block the view of the stable's back area. "Everything's fine here." Mike unloaded a package of supplies, then asked the question Emma had been dreading. "Mind if I warm up in the stable for a bit before heading back? My fingers are about to fall off." "Actually, I've been having some issues with the stable roof," Emma improvised. "There's a leak that's making everything wet. Better use the cabin." Mike looked disappointed but nodded. "Sure thing. Wouldn't want to catch pneumonia." While Mike warmed himself by the wood stove and updated Emma on news from the station, she remained distracted, glancing frequently toward the window that overlooked the back of the property. She answered his questions mechanically, offering coffee and hoping he wouldn't notice her preoccupation. After what seemed like an eternity, Mike prepared to leave. "Almost forgot. Jerry wants you to check the eastern boundary markers when it's safe to travel. Those new trail cameras caught something strange last week." "Strange how?" Emma asked, suddenly attentive. "Some guys with trucks where no vehicles should be. Might be the poachers you reported signs of last month. Be careful out there, okay?" After Mike departed, Emma rushed to the back of the stable. Phantom and Luna were exactly where she'd left them, though the foal was lying down again, clearly tired from standing. "Thank you," Emma said, leading them back inside. "You're both remarkable." As she settled them in with fresh hay and water, Emma wondered what she'd gotten herself into. Hiding wild horses from her colleagues, lying to Mike, these weren't actions of a responsible ranger. Yet looking at Luna's trusting eyes and Phantom's noble stance, she couldn't bring herself to regret her decisions. That night, as Emma updated her personal journal, she wrote, "I've never believed animals could reason like humans or understand complex situations. Today has challenged everything I thought I knew. Either I'm anthropomorphizing wildly, or these horses are unlike any I've encountered before. Whatever the truth, I'm committed now to seeing this through." The next 3 days established a rhythm to Emma's unusual situation. Each morning began with tending to Luna's injury, which was healing remarkably well. The foal had started putting more weight on the leg, though Emma kept the bandage in place to protect the wound. Phantom remained vigilant, watching Emma's every move, but displaying a trust that defied explanation. Emma spent her days dividing time between ranger duties and researching horse care on her laptop during brief periods when the satellite internet connection functioned. Her veterinary manual provided basic information, but she needed more specific guidance on treating young horses. The preserve's digital archives also became a valuable resource as Emma searched for any historical records of wild horses in the region. During one such research session, she discovered an article from 15 years ago that mentioned the Silverstone Ranch, located about 30 miles beyond the preserve's eastern boundary. The ranch had specialized in breeding Andalusians and rare Acalteques, horses known for their exceptional intelligence and sometimes metallic coat appearance. According to the article, a devastating wildfire had swept through the area, and while most of the ranch's horses had been evacuated, several had broken free during the chaos. "Could you be descendants of those horses?" Emma asked, looking at Phantom. The stallion stood near the stable door, his ears perked forward as if listening. "That might explain your size and coloring. Acalteques can have that almost metallic sheen your coat sometimes shows in certain light." On the afternoon of the fourth day, the radio crackled with news that the main access road had been cleared. Emma would soon lose her isolation and her ability to keep Phantom and Luna hidden. She needed to make decisions quickly. The foal was recovering, but not yet strong enough for a journey through deep snow, especially with potential predators in the forest. Emma considered her options carefully. The most logical course would be to report the horses to the preserve authorities, who would likely attempt to capture them for relocation or return them to the wild depending on their policy. But something about this solution felt wrong to Emma. These weren't ordinary wild horses. Their behavior, especially Phantom's, suggested something extraordinary. Making up her mind, Emma radioed Jerry with a request that surprised even herself. "I'd like to extend my rotation at the outpost for another 2 weeks," she said, trying to sound casual. "I've been tracking some interesting wildlife patterns after the storm, and I'd like to continue my observations." The radio was silent for a moment before Jerry responded. "That's unusual, Emma. Most rangers can't wait to get back to civilization after being snowed in. Everything okay up there?" "Everything's fine," she assured him. "Just dedicated to the job, you know me." "All right," Jerry agreed, though he sounded puzzled. "But I'll need you to check those eastern boundary markers soon. Mike mentioned he told you about the suspicious activity." "I'll head out tomorrow," Emma promised, already planning how to manage her time away from the horses. The following morning dawned clear and cold. Emma prepared for her boundary check, packing her backpack with essentials: radio, GPS, binoculars, first aid kit, and enough supplies for a day trip. Before leaving, she changed Luna's bandage and provided both horses with fresh water and hay. "I'll be back before sunset," she told them, feeling only slightly foolish for speaking as if they understood. Phantom's intelligent eyes followed her, and he made a soft nickering sound that Emma had come to recognize as acknowledgement. The journey to the eastern boundary took nearly 3 hours on snowshoes. Emma followed the line of marked trees that delineated the preserve's edge, checking each boundary post and the trail cameras attached to some of them. The snow made travel difficult, but the clear weather provided excellent visibility across the pristine landscape. At the 5th marker, Emma found what Jerry had been concerned about. The post had been deliberately damaged, with the trail camera missing entirely. Nearby, despite the recent heavy snowfall, she could make out the faint impressions of vehicle tracks, larger than standard cars, likely trucks or ATVs. Emma documented the scene with her camera, noting the coordinates and taking detailed notes. As she continued to the next boundary marker, a sense of unease grew within her. Poachers weren't uncommon in remote wilderness areas, but they typically targeted specific animals: elk for their antlers, bears for their gallbladders, or other wildlife with valuable parts on black markets. The 6th boundary marker revealed more troubling evidence. Not only was the trail camera missing, but Emma found a section of fence that had been cut and hastily repaired to conceal the breach. Most concerning of all were the distinctive hoof prints she identified in a patch of partially melted snow, Horse tracks, several sets of them, heading into preserve territory. Emma's ranger training included tracking, and what she saw told a disturbing story. The tracks showed at least 3 horses being led, not ridden, through the cut fence. The pattern suggested horses on lead ropes, moving reluctantly, with human footprints alongside them. Horse thieves. The realization hit Emma with chilling clarity. The poachers weren't after wildlife, they were after wild horses, possibly Phantom, Luna, and others from their herd. Taking extensive photos and notes, Emma completed her inspection of the remaining boundary markers before heading back to the cabin. Her mind raced with implications. If people were hunting the wild horses, it would explain why Phantom had risked approaching a human dwelling during the storm. They were already being pursued, and Luna's injury might have occurred during their escape. As the outpost came into view, Emma noticed something that made her quicken her pace. Fresh tracks in the snow circled the cabin and stable. Human boot prints and snowmobile treads that hadn't been there when she left that morning. Heart pounding, Emma approached cautiously, her hand moving to the service pistol at her hip. The cabin door was closed as she'd left it, but the stable door stood slightly ajar. Drawing her weapon, Emma moved silently to the stable entrance and peered inside. Relief flooded through her when she saw Phantom and Luna still there, apparently unharmed. But her relief quickly turned to concern as she spotted a small object attached to the wall just inside the door, a compact trail camera, its lens pointed directly at the stable interior. Someone had discovered her secret and was now watching. Emma carefully removed the camera, checking it for identifying marks. It was a commercial model available at any sporting goods store with no serial number visible. She considered destroying it, but instead placed it in her pack. Evidence. Turning to the horses, she noticed Phantom's agitated state. The stallion paced the small space, his powerful muscles tense beneath his white coat. Luna, too, seemed distressed, pressing close to the larger horse for protection. Someone was here, Emma said softly, stroking Luna's neck to calm her. But I won't let them take you. I promise. That night, Emma barely slept. She positioned her cot where she could see both the cabin door and the entrance to the stable, her rifle within arm's reach. Questions tumbled through her mind. Who had placed the camera? How had they known about the horses? Were they connected to the fence breach she'd discovered? Most troubling of all, what would they do next? Dawn broke with Emma already awake, having dozed fitfully through the night. She had positioned her sleeping bag in the stable, unwilling to leave Phantom and Luna alone after discovering the hidden camera. As first light filtered through the small window, she studied the camera again. It was a standard trail model with motion activation, nothing unusual except for its placement. Emma made her morning radio check with Jerry, deliberately keeping her report vague about the boundary inspection. She mentioned the damaged markers, but omitted her suspicions about horse thieves. Until she understood what she was dealing with, Emma preferred to keep her theories to herself. I'll send Mike up to help repair those boundary markers, Jerry said. He can head your way tomorrow. No need, Emma replied quickly. I can handle it myself. I'd rather not pull Mike away from other duties. There was a pause before Jerry responded. You're acting strange lately, Matthews. Everything really okay up there? Just enjoying the solitude, she lied, hating the deception, but seeing no alternative. You know how I get during winter rotations. After signing off, Emma turned to Phantom. We need to figure out who's after you and why. She spent the morning examining maps of the surrounding area, focusing on the terrain between the preserve and where the Silverstone Ranch had once operated. According to her research, the ranch property had been sold after the fire, but Emma couldn't find information about the current owners. The preserve's records weren't detailed enough. While Luna rested, Emma decided to let Phantom outside for exercise. The massive horse had been remarkably patient in the confined space, but she knew he needed movement. The small fenced area behind the stable wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. As Phantom stretched his legs in the enclosed space, Emma watched him closely. His movements were graceful despite his size, powerful muscles rippling beneath his white coat. In the morning sunlight, she could see more clearly the unusual metallic sheen that had made her suspect Acalteque breeding. "You're something special, aren't you?" she murmured. Phantom turned to look at her, and Emma was once again struck by the intelligence in his gaze. The horse approached the fence where she stood, lowering his massive head to her level. Without hesitation, Emma reached out to stroke his muzzle, marveling at the trust they'd established in such a short time. A sudden idea struck her. If she could gain access to genetic testing, she might be able to confirm Phantom's lineage. Such information could be valuable in protecting both horses if they were indeed rare breeds with documented history. But that would require resources she didn't have at the outpost. Emma's thoughts were interrupted by Phantom's sudden alertness. The stallion's head jerked up, ears pricked forward toward the forest that bordered the cabin's clearing. Following his gaze, Emma saw nothing at first, but she'd learned to trust the horse's senses. Quietly retrieving her binoculars from the cabin, Emma scanned the tree line. There, almost invisible against the white and brown backdrop, was a figure partially hidden behind a large pine. Someone was watching the cabin. Emma's hand moved instinctively to her service pistol, but she hesitated. Confronting the observer directly might escalate the situation dangerously. Instead, she casually led Phantom back into the stable, securing both horses inside before grabbing her rifle and radio. "This is Ranger Matthews," she spoke into the radio, deliberately loud enough to be heard outside. "Requesting backup at Northern Outpost. Possible trespasser on preserve grounds." It was a bluff. Help wouldn't arrive for hours even if she were making a genuine request, but the watcher wouldn't know that. Emma positioned herself inside the cabin with a clear view of the tree line, waiting to see if her tactic would flush out the observer. Several tense minutes passed before Emma saw movement. The figure emerged from the trees, a man in winter camouflage carrying a high-powered rifle with a scope. He hesitated at the edge of the clearing, clearly weighing his options. Emma's radio request had obviously been heard, but the man seemed reluctant to leave. Through her binoculars, Emma studied his appearance and equipment. The rifle wasn't a typical hunting model, and the man's clothing, while designed for winter conditions, wasn't standard hunting gear either. Everything about him suggested professional operation rather than casual poaching. Finally, after scanning the area carefully, the man retreated into the forest. Emma watched until she was certain he was gone, then quickly made a real call to Preserve headquarters. "Jerry, I need to report a trespasser near the Northern Outpost. Armed white male, approximately 6 feet tall, carrying a scoped rifle. He was observing the cabin but fled when he realized I'd spotted him." "Are you safe?" Jerry asked, his voice tense with concern. "For now. He's gone, but I'm staying alert. I'm sending rangers your way immediately, but it'll take at least 3 hours. Stay inside, keep your rifle handy, and maintain radio contact." After signing off, Emma returned to the stable. Both horses were agitated, sensing her tension. Phantom paced the small space while Luna pressed against the wall, trembling slightly. "It's okay," Emma assured them, though she felt far from certain herself. "Help is coming." The next few hours were an exercise in controlled anxiety. Emma secured the cabin and stable as best she could, keeping watch through the windows while periodically checking on the horses. Phantom's behavior was particularly interesting. The stallion positioned himself between Luna and the door, his powerful body creating a living barrier of protection. As promised, 3 rangers arrived by snowmobile in the early afternoon. Emma greeted them with relief, though she was acutely aware of the secret she was still keeping in the stable. "Show us where you saw him," the lead ranger Davis requested after Emma had described the encounter. Emma led them to the spot where the watcher had stood, finding boot prints partially filled with fresh snow. While Davis radioed the findings to headquarters, Emma spoke quietly with the youngest ranger, Sarah Bennett, whom she knew from training sessions. "Sarah, what do you know about wild horses in the preserve?" Sarah looked surprised by the question. "Not much. There are rumors about a small herd, but most rangers consider it a local legend. Why?" "Just curious," Emma replied, trying to sound casual. "I came across some unusual tracks during my boundary check yesterday." Sarah's expression changed subtly. "Actually, there's been some chatter about valuable horses. Last month, a ranger in the eastern sector reported seeing a white stallion. Massive, they said. Bigger than any domestic breed. Shortly after, we started getting reports of unauthorized vehicles near the boundaries." Emma felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. "Has anyone reported this connection to headquarters?" "It was mentioned, but the priority has been on standard poaching concerns. Elk and deer, you know the drill. Why? Have you seen something?" Before Emma could respond, Davis called them back to the cabin. "We're setting up motion sensors around the perimeter," he explained. "If anyone approaches within 100 yards, you'll be alerted. We're also leaving you this." He handed Emma a satellite phone. "Direct line to headquarters, works better than the radio in emergencies." As the rangers prepared to leave, Emma faced a critical decision. These were her colleagues, people she trusted. Should she reveal Phantom and Luna's presence? The additional protection might be crucial, but it would also mean surrendering control of the horse's fate to preserve protocols. Looking at Sarah's honest face, Emma nearly confided in her. But Davis's next words made her hesitate. "By the way, there's a new directive about any wild horses spotted in the preserve. They're to be reported immediately to the director's office, not through normal channels. Apparently there's some special interest from the research department." The wording seemed innocent enough, but something in Davis's tone raised Emma's suspicions. Why would wild horses warrant special attention bypassing normal protocols? After the rangers departed, Emma returned to the stable, her mind racing with new questions. Phantom met her at the door, his dark eyes searching her face as if sensing her dilemma. "I think we're in deeper trouble than I realized," Emma told him softly. "And I'm not sure who to trust anymore." Night fell quickly, the winter darkness enveloping the outpost like a shroud. Emma had reinforced the stable door with additional lumber she found in the storage shed, creating a makeshift barricade that would at least slow down any intruders. The motion sensors left by the rangers blinked silently around the perimeter, their tiny red lights barely visible in the gathering gloom. Inside the cabin, Emma spread her research materials across the table. She had downloaded as much information as possible about the Silverstone Ranch before losing the satellite connection. The ranch had been owned by a woman named Eleanor Silverstone, a respected breeder who had specialized in rare horse bloodlines. After the devastating fire 15 years ago, Eleanor had disappeared from the equestrian world entirely. The property had changed hands multiple times since then, most recently purchased by a corporation called Meridian Genetics. The name triggered Emma's memory. She had read about Meridian in a wildlife conservation journal. They were involved in genetic research, focusing on preserving endangered species through DNA banking and selective breeding programs. On the surface, it seemed like legitimate scientific work, but something about the connection made Emma uneasy. Returning to the stable with a fresh lantern, Emma found Phantom standing watch near Luna, who was sleeping peacefully on the straw bedding. The foal's leg was healing remarkably well, another peculiarity that Emma had noticed. The wound that should have taken weeks to heal was already showing significant improvement after just days of basic care. "I think I'm starting to understand why people might be after you," Emma told Phantom quietly, stroking his powerful neck. "If you're descended from Eleanor Silverstone's breeding program, you could carry extremely valuable genetic traits. especially if you've survived in the wild all these years. Phantom lowered his head to Emma's level, his breath warm against her face. In the lantern light, his eyes reflected an almost golden glow that emphasized their unusual depth and intelligence. A sudden realization struck Emma. She had a way to potentially confirm her suspicions. During her ranger training, she had learned basic DNA collection techniques for wildlife population studies. The preserve maintained a small field laboratory at the main station for processing samples. If she could obtain hair samples from both horses and get them tested, she might be able to determine their genetic lineage. Using a clean plastic bag from her supplies, Emma carefully collected several strands of hair from both Phantom and Luna, making sure to get the follicles intact. She labeled the samples and tucked them safely into her jacket pocket. The next challenge would be getting them to the lab without raising suspicions. As Emma completed this task, one of the motion sensors outside emitted a soft beep. Someone or something had crossed the perimeter. Immediately alert, Emma extinguished the lantern and moved to the stable door, peering through a small gap in the planks. The night was clear, the snow-covered ground illuminated by a three-quarter moon that cast long shadows from the surrounding trees. At first, she saw nothing. Then a movement caught her eye. Not a human figure this time, but a horse. Another white horse, smaller than Phantom but with the same distinctive coat, emerged cautiously from the tree line. It paused at the edge of the clearing, head high, nostrils flaring as it tested the air. Phantom immediately sensed the newcomer's presence. He moved to the stable door, pushing gently against Emma's shoulder. The soft nickering sound he made was different from any she had heard from him before, almost like a greeting. "Is that one of your herd?" Emma whispered, although she knew Phantom couldn't answer. Still, his behavior suggested he recognized the visitor. The newcomer took several tentative steps into the clearing, then stopped abruptly, head turning toward the forest. Almost instantly, it wheeled around and disappeared back among the trees. Seconds later, Emma understood why. The distinctive sound of a snowmobile engine broke the silence, growing louder as it approached from the direction of the main trail. Emma moved quickly, securing the stable door before hurrying to the cabin. Through the window, she watched as a single snowmobile came into view, its headlight cutting through the darkness. The rider was alone, wearing the standard Forest Service uniform. As the vehicle came closer, Emma recognized Sarah Bennett, the young ranger she had spoken with earlier. Relieved but still cautious, Emma opened the cabin door as Sarah killed the engine. "What brings you back?" Emma called out, keeping her tone casual despite her racing heart. Sarah pulled off her helmet, her expression serious. "I needed to talk to you privately, away from Davis and the others." She glanced around nervously. "Can we go inside?" Once in the cabin with the door closed, Sarah's professional demeanor cracked. "Emma, there's something strange going on with this wild horse situation. After we left, I checked the records on that special directive Davis mentioned. It didn't come from the research department. It came directly from the director's office, but it's not in any official capacity. It's off the books." Emma felt her suspicions crystallizing into certainty. "What exactly does the directive say?" "Any wild horses spotted in the preserve are to be reported immediately and exclusively to Director Harmon's private line. No documentation in official reports, no photographs, nothing in writing. Rangers are instructed to maintain surveillance, but not approach the animals." Sarah paused. "It gets weirder. There's a substantial finder's fee mentioned for any ranger who helps locate the white stallion and any offspring." The pieces were falling into place. "Have you told anyone you're here?" Sarah shook her head. "No. I told Davis I was heading home, then doubled back." She hesitated. "Emma, I've worked in conservation my entire career. This doesn't feel right. These kinds of off-book directives usually mean someone's breaking regulations." Emma made a split-second decision. Sarah's concern seemed genuine, and she desperately needed an ally. "I need to show you something, but I need your word that this stays between us until we figure out what's happening." Sarah nodded, and Emma led her to the stable. When she unbarred the door and swung it open, Sarah's sharp intake of breath confirmed Emma had made the right choice in trusting her. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, staring at Phantom's magnificent form. "He's real." The white stallion regarded the newcomer warily, positioning himself protectively in front of Luna. Emma approached him slowly, placing a reassuring hand on his neck. "This is Phantom, and the foal is Luna. They came to my door during the blizzard. Luna was injured, and Phantom somehow knew to seek help." Sarah entered cautiously, her ranger training evident in her careful movements. "They are wild, but they trust you this much. That's unprecedented." "I know. I think they've been running from whoever is searching for them." Emma briefly explained her theory about the Silverstone Ranch connection and showed Sarah the hair samples she'd collected. "I need to get these tested without alerting whoever is behind that directive." Sarah studied the horses with an expert eye. "These aren't ordinary wild Mustangs. The conformation, the coat quality, they're exceptional specimens." She turned to Emma, her expression resolute. "I have a friend at the University Research Lab in Westridge. We can get these samples tested privately, off the preserve's records." For the first time in days, Emma felt a surge of hope. Having Sarah as an ally changed everything. But as they discussed their next steps, Emma couldn't shake the memory of the third white horse that had appeared briefly at the edge of the clearing. There were more of Phantom's herd out there, and they were still in danger. Sarah left before dawn, taking the precious hair samples with her. She would travel to Westridge under the pretense of picking up personal supplies, planning to meet her university contact by midday. Emma watched the snowmobile's taillights disappear into the darkness, feeling both relief and apprehension. She was no longer alone in her secret, but that meant the stakes were now higher for both of them. Returning to the stable, Emma found Phantom standing alert, his ears pricked forward. Luna had improved enough to stand comfortably, the young foal moving around the enclosed space with increasing confidence. Emma checked the bandage and was once again struck by the remarkable healing progress. What might have taken weeks was occurring in days. "Your DNA might be worth more than I realized," Emma told them as she replaced Luna's water. "The question is, who knows about it, and what do they want to do with you?" The morning radio check with headquarters was routine, though Emma found herself analyzing every word from Jerry, searching for hidden meanings or signs that he might be involved in whatever was happening. There was nothing obvious, but her trust in the preserve's leadership had been irrevocably shaken. As Emma was completing her weather observations, the satellite phone beeped with an incoming text. Sarah had programmed her personal number into it before leaving. The message was brief. "Meeting contact at 2 p.m. All clear so far. We'll update tonight." With several hours to wait, Emma decided to continue her research. If Phantom and Luna were indeed descendants of Eleanor Silverstone's breeding program, what made them so valuable that people would risk illegal entry into a federal preserve to find them? Emma's ranger training had included courses on wildlife trafficking and black market trade. Rare animal specimens could command astronomical prices for various purposes: breeding, performance, or even biomedical research. If these horses carried genetic traits that were unique or commercially valuable, it would explain the interest from a company like Meridian Genetics. She was reviewing her notes when the motion sensor alarm suddenly chimed, the one positioned on the north side of the clearing. Emma instantly went on alert, grabbing her binoculars and moving to the window. Through the lens, she spotted movement among the trees, but it wasn't human. Another white horse, possibly the same one she had seen the previous night, was cautiously approaching the clearing. This time, Emma observed more details. The horse was a mare, smaller than Phantom, but with similar conformation and coat quality. She moved with deliberate caution, stopping frequently to survey the surroundings before continuing. Her behavior suggested intelligence and purpose rather than random wandering. In the stable, Phantom had sensed the visitor. He was pacing restlessly, occasionally nickering softly in a way that Emma had come to recognize as communication. Making a quick decision, Emma unbarred the stable's back door, opening it to the fenced area behind the building. "Go on," she encouraged Phantom, gesturing toward the opening. "I think she's looking for you." The stallion hesitated, glancing back at Luna. The foal had approached the door, her curiosity evident. Emma understood the dilemma. Phantom wouldn't leave Luna unprotected. "It's okay," Emma said softly. "I'll watch over her. You can go." Whether he understood her words or simply trusted her presence, Phantom finally moved through the door into the fenced area. Standing tall, his white coat gleaming in the winter sunlight, he let out a powerful whinny that echoed across the clearing. The sound was commanding, unmistakable, a call to the visitor. The mare at the forest edge responded immediately, lifting her head and answering with her own whinny. Still cautious, she emerged fully from the trees, walking slowly toward the cabin. Emma watched in fascination as the two horses communicated across the distance, their body language and vocalizations forming a dialogue she couldn't understand, but could clearly recognize. When the mare reached the edge of the fenced area, she and Phantom touched noses through the wire. Emma observed their interaction from the stable doorway, keeping a protective arm around Luna, who watched with evident interest. The moment felt sacred somehow, a reunion that transcended ordinary animal behavior. After several minutes of this silent communion, the mare suddenly tensed, her head turning sharply toward the forest. Phantom immediately responded to her alarm, his powerful body coiling with tension. Before Emma could process what was happening, the mare bolted, disappearing into the trees with remarkable speed. Seconds later, Emma heard what had spooked the horse, the distant sound of an engine approaching from the main trail. Not a snowmobile this time, but something larger. The preserve used snowcats for winter transport of heavy equipment, but they rarely came this far north. Emma quickly ushered Phantom back into the stable, securing both horses inside before grabbing her binoculars and rifle. From the cabin window, she watched as a large snow vehicle came into view. It wasn't a preserve snowcat, but a private model, expensive and powerful, designed for backcountry travel. 3 men occupied it, none wearing ranger uniforms. The vehicle stopped at the edge of the clearing, and 2 men disembarked while the driver remained at the controls. They were dressed in professional winter gear, carrying equipment cases rather than weapons, but Emma sensed danger nonetheless. These weren't casual visitors or lost tourists. She stepped onto the cabin porch, rifle visibly present but not aimed. "This is a restricted area," she called out with authority. "Federal Wildlife Preserve. I need to see identification." The men exchanged glances before the taller one responded. "Ranger Matthews, I'm Dr. Alan Mercer from the Department of Interior, Wildlife Research Division." He held up what appeared to be official credentials. "We're conducting an assessment of large mammal populations following the recent storm. Your supervisor should have notified you of our visit." Emma maintained her professional demeanor while mentally noting the inconsistencies in his story. The Department of Interior didn't send field researchers without extensive coordination with preserve management, and Jerry would have definitely informed her of official visitors. "I haven't received any notification," she replied. "And our protocols require 48-hour advance notice for research activities, especially in remote sectors." The man who had identified himself as Mercer smiled thinly. "This is an emergency assessment. The storm created unusual conditions that require immediate data collection." He gestured to his companion. Dr. Rivera and I won't need much of your time. We just need to set up some monitoring equipment and take a few environmental samples. Emma noted that neither man carried the typical sampling equipment used for wildlife population studies. Instead, their cases looked more suitable for specialized electronic equipment, and despite claiming to study large mammals, they had no tracking or tagging gear visible. I'll need to verify this with headquarters before I can authorize any research activities, Emma stated firmly. Our satellite connection is down, but I can reach them by radio. Please wait in your vehicle while I confirm your clearance. The two men exchanged another look, and Emma detected frustration in their body language. Of course, Mercer finally agreed. We understand protocols. We'll wait. As they returned to the snowcat, Emma retreated into the cabin, her mind racing. These men were not who they claimed to be, and their arrival so soon after the mayor's appearance couldn't be coincidence. They were tracking the white horses, and they had found their way to her doorstep. Inside the cabin, Emma's hand hovered over the radio. If these men were connected to Director Harmon's off-book directive, alerting headquarters might put Phantom and Luna in more danger. Yet ignoring protocol with unauthorized visitors could cost Emma her job, or worse if these men had more sinister intentions. Making a decision, she keyed the radio. Outpost north to base, come in. After a moment of static, Jerry's voice responded. Base here. What's up, Emma? I have visitors claiming to be from Department of Interior Wildlife Research, Emma said carefully. Doctors Mercer and Rivera. They say they're conducting emergency assessment after the storm. Can you verify their authorization? The pause that followed lasted several seconds longer than it should have. Hold on, checking. Through the window, Emma observed the men in the snowcat. They were watching the cabin intently, and she noticed the driver speaking into what appeared to be a satellite phone. Whoever these people were, they had resources and connections. The radio crackled again. Emma, Director Harmon has confirmed they're authorized. He apologizes for the oversight and notification. Please provide all necessary assistance. The response confirmed Emma's suspicions. If these men were legitimate researchers, proper documentation would be in the system, not requiring the director's personal verification. Something was very wrong. Understood, she replied, keeping her voice neutral. I'll assist with their research. Matthew's out. Emma moved quickly, slipping out the back door of the cabin and rushing to the stable. Phantom and Luna were alert, sensing her urgency. She checked the hidden satellite phone. No updates from Sarah yet. Time was running out. I need to keep them away from you, she whispered to the horses. Stay quiet. Returning to the cabin, Emma composed herself before stepping onto the porch. Your credentials have been verified, she called to the men. However, I'll need to accompany you during your assessment. Standard preserve protocol. Mercer's smile didn't reach his eyes as he and Rivera approached the cabin carrying their equipment cases. Of course, Ranger Matthews, we appreciate your cooperation. Emma led them around the perimeter of the clearing, deliberately steering them away from the stable. What specific data are you collecting? She asked, maintaining her professional demeanor. We're monitoring large mammal movement patterns following weather events, Rivera explained, his tone academic but rushed. Deer, elk, and other ungulates often establish new territories after major storms. Including feral horses? Emma asked directly, watching their reactions. A flicker of tension crossed Mercer's face before he replied. Any large mammals in the ecosystem. Wild horses would certainly qualify, though they're uncommon in this region. Actually, Emma countered, there have been reports of a small herd. I've been documenting evidence during my rotation. The men exchanged glances. We'd be very interested in reviewing your findings, Mercer said, particularly any photographic evidence or location data. Unfortunately, I haven't personally encountered any horses, Emma lied smoothly. Just tracks and other signs, but I'm happy to share my observation logs. As they circled back toward the cabin, Rivera suddenly stopped, kneeling to examine something in the snow. Emma's heart sank as she realized what he'd found: distinct hoof prints near the path to the stable. The recent activity had left evidence she hadn't had time to conceal. "Interesting prints here," Rivera commented, taking out a measuring device. "Large equine, definitely. Recent, too." "Yes, I mentioned horse signs," Emma said casually. "That area behind the cabin is sheltered from the wind. I found various animal tracks there." Mercer was studying the stable now with renewed interest. "What do you keep in that outbuilding, Ranger Matthews?" "Storage mostly. Equipment. Feed for wildlife rehabilitation cases. Nothing exciting." Emma forced a smile. "Let's head inside. I can show you those observation logs I mentioned." The men followed her reluctantly, but Emma could tell their focus had shifted. They knew something was in the stable. As they entered the cabin, the radio suddenly crackled to life. "Base to Outpost North. Emma, you there?" It was Jerry again, his tone different, urgent. Emma felt the men watching her as she answered. "Outpost North here. Go ahead. Just received alert from Eastern Boundary. Multiple unauthorized vehicles entering the preserve. Security team dispatched, but they're requesting all rangers maintain vigilance. These individuals may be armed." Emma kept her expression neutral while her mind raced. Was this a coincidence, or were more people coming for the horses? "Understood. I'll stay alert. Matthews out." Mercer's demeanor had changed. The pretense of scientific interest was fading, replaced by a cold efficiency. "Ranger Matthews, I'll be direct. We have reason to believe you've encountered unique wildlife specimens of significant research value, specifically horses with distinctive genetic markers." "I don't know what you're talking about," Emma replied evenly. "Let me clarify our position," Mercer continued. "I do represent a research division, but through Meridian Genetics, not the Department of Interior. We've been tracking a particular bloodline of horses for several years, descendants of the Silverstone breeding program." The direct admission surprised Emma. "That's illegal entry into a federal preserve, misrepresentation to a federal officer, multiple federal offenses." Mercer smiled thinly. "Which is why we have arrangements with your director, mutually beneficial arrangements." "What makes these horses so valuable?" Emma asked, playing for time while considering her options. Rivera set down his case and opened it, revealing not research equipment but a computer with genetic profiles displayed on the screen. Eleanor Silverstone was decades ahead of her time. She developed a line of horses with extraordinary characteristics: enhanced healing, extreme intelligence, superior physical capabilities. Her techniques were revolutionary but controversial. "When her ranch burned," Mercer continued, "most people believed her research was lost. But we've been tracking reports of unusual white horses in this region for years. Horses that match the genetic profile of Silverstone's most advanced breeding lines." The pieces clicked into place. Luna's remarkable healing rate, Phantom's unusual intelligence, their distinctive appearance. These weren't just rare breeds, they were the results of groundbreaking genetic work. "These animals represent millions in potential biomedical applications," Rivera added. "Tissue regeneration alone could revolutionize medical treatment." Emma maintained her poker face. "Fascinating theory, but I haven't seen any such horses." Mercer's patience visibly thinned. "Ranger Matthews, we tracked one of the mares directly to this location this morning, and those prints outside lead directly to your stable." He stepped closer. "We have authorization from your superiors and significant resources at our disposal. This can go smoothly, or it can become complicated. Your choice." The implied threat hung in the air. Emma weighed her options. She was outnumbered, and if Director Harmon was involved, calling for backup might only bring more enemies. She needed to stall until Sarah returned with the DNA results and, hopefully, outside help. Just as the tension reached its peak, the satellite phone in Emma's pocket vibrated. A text from Sarah. DNA results confirm unique genetic markers. These horses are legally protected under the Genetic Heritage Conservation Act. Do not release to anyone. Federal agents notified. ETA 3 hours. Emma felt a surge of hope. The Genetic Heritage Conservation Act protected animals with unique genetic characteristics from exploitation, particularly those with potential medical applications. If Phantom and Luna qualified for protection, Meridian's plans would be legally blocked. "I need to check something outside," Emma said firmly. "Please wait here." "I think we'll accompany you," Mercer replied, his tone making it clear it wasn't a request. As they stepped onto the porch, a new sound cut through the winter air. Helicopters approaching from the south, multiple aircraft moving fast. "Seems we're out of time for pleasantries," Mercer said, signaling to the snowcat driver, who immediately started the engine. "Where are the horses, Ranger Matthews? This is your last opportunity to cooperate." Emma measured her response carefully, aware that the next few minutes would determine Phantom and Luna's fate. The sound of approaching helicopters grew louder, but she couldn't tell if they represented salvation or additional threat. "Those horses aren't yours to take," she said firmly to Mercer. "Whether they're in my stable or not, they're wildlife on protected federal land." Mercer's expression hardened. "Those animals represent proprietary genetic material. Meridian has legal claim through our acquisition of Silverstone's research patents." He gestured toward the stable. "We can discuss legal technicalities later. Right now, we need to secure the specimens before those helicopters arrive." Emma positioned herself between the men and the path to the stable. "If you have legitimate claims, you can pursue them through proper channels. As the acting federal authority here, I'm denying access to any wildlife in my jurisdiction until proper documentation is provided." Rivera stepped forward, his demeanor shifting from academic to threatening. "We don't have time for this. Director Harmon has already granted authorization." "Which may be investigated for ethics violations," Emma countered. "The Genetic Heritage Conservation Act specifically protects animals with unique genetic characteristics from exploitation. According to preliminary DNA analysis, these horses qualify for protection." The mention of DNA analysis caused both men to freeze momentarily. Mercer recovered first, his voice low and dangerous. "You took samples? Who did you send them to?" Before Emma could respond, the helicopter sounds changed pitch. They were beginning descent procedures nearby. Through the trees, she glimpsed at least 2 aircraft, their markings not immediately visible from this distance. "Last chance, Ranger Matthews," Mercer said urgently. "Cooperate now, and Meridian will ensure your career advances rather than ends. Those are our horses." "They belong to themselves," Emma replied, standing her ground. "And they're under federal protection." Mercer signaled to Rivera, who reached inside his jacket. Emma tensed, her hand moving to her service weapon, but instead of a gun, he withdrew a small device that resembled a specialized remote control. "We came prepared for resistance," Mercer explained coldly. "This is an acoustic collar designed specifically for the Silverstone bloodline. Their enhanced hearing makes them particularly responsive to certain frequency patterns." Rivera activated the device, which emitted no sound detectable to human ears. Almost immediately, Emma heard movement from the stable, Phantom's distinctive whinny, followed by the sound of hooves against wood. Emma's blood ran cold. They had technology specifically designed to control these horses. She turned and sprinted toward the stable, hearing the men following close behind. Reaching the door first, she threw the wooden bar across it, creating a temporary barrier. They're using some kind of acoustic device. She shouted toward the stable. Phantom, don't respond to it. Of course, the horse couldn't understand her specific warning, but her voice seemed to have some effect. The agitated movement inside settled slightly. Emma pressed her back against the door, facing the approaching men. This is federal property, she called out, drawing her service weapon. You are ordered to leave immediately. Mercer stopped, assessing the situation. You're making a career-ending mistake, Matthews. That device will become increasingly painful for the horses until they respond. It's designed to mimic the neural patterns Eleanor Silverstone used during their early training. As if confirming his words, Emma heard Phantom's distressed whinny from inside the stable. The acoustic technology was clearly causing the horses discomfort. She needed to buy more time until whatever help Sarah had arranged could arrive. The distant sound of engines caught everyone's attention, not the helicopters, which were now circling overhead, but ground vehicles approaching rapidly from the main trail, multiple engines moving fast. Federal agents, a voice boomed through a loudspeaker. This is the Fish and Wildlife Service Special Investigations Unit. All personnel remain where you are. Relief flooded through Emma, though she maintained her defensive position. Sarah had come through. The Fish and Wildlife Service's special unit handled cases of endangered species trafficking and wildlife exploitation, exactly what was happening here. Mercer's face contorted with rage and frustration. He turned to the snowcat driver and made a sharp hand signal. The driver immediately engaged the engine, maneuvering the vehicle toward them at dangerous speed. They're trying to create a diversion, Emma shouted, hoping the approaching agents could hear. They have technology to control the horses. Rivera, still holding the acoustic device, lunged toward Emma. She sidestepped, maintaining her position in front of the stable door while keeping her weapon trained on him. Drop it, now! The helicopters were directly overhead now, their downdraft swirling snow across the clearing. One began to descend in the open area beyond the cabin, while the other maintained a hovering position, its spotlight illuminating the confrontation below. Inside the stable, the horses were becoming increasingly distressed. Emma could hear Phantom moving frantically, his powerful body thudding against the walls. Luna's frightened whinnies pierced her heart. The acoustic device was clearly causing them severe distress. The first of the ground vehicles burst into the clearing, 2 black SUVs with federal markings followed by a Preserve Ranger truck. They skidded to controlled stops surrounding the Meridian snowcat. Agents in tactical gear emerged, weapons drawn. Federal agents, drop your weapons and equipment. Mercer assessed the situation, clearly calculating his options. With a nod to Rivera, both men slowly raised their hands. The acoustic device fell to the snow. Emma immediately kicked it away from them, relief washing over her as the horses inside the stable began to quiet. The immediate crisis was passing, but she knew the danger wasn't over. These men had resources, connections, and apparently legal claims through Meridian's acquisition of Silverstone's patents. As the federal agents secured Mercer and Rivera, a woman in a Fish and Wildlife Service jacket approached Emma. Agent Diane Rodriguez, she introduced herself. You must be Ranger Matthews. Your colleague Sarah Bennett contacted our office with quite a story. It's all true, Emma replied, finally lowering her weapon. The horses are inside. They're remarkable, unlike any I've ever encountered. Rodriguez nodded grimly. Based on the preliminary DNA analysis your friend provided, we're dealing with a significant case under the Genetic Heritage Conservation Act. These animals represent a unique genetic lineage with scientific importance. That's why Meridian wants them so badly, Emma confirmed. They mentioned biomedical applications worth millions, which is exactly why the act exists, to prevent exploitation of genetically unique wildlife. Rodriguez glanced toward the helicopters, where more agents were disembarking. We've brought veterinary specialists and transportation equipment. We need to relocate these horses immediately to a secure facility. Emma felt a pang of concern. Relocate them? Where? Federal Wildlife Sanctuary in Wyoming. It's equipped for genetically significant species requiring special protection. Rodriguez's expression softened slightly. I understand you've bonded with these animals, but they'll need specialized care and security that can't be provided here. Behind them, Mercer was being led to one of the vehicles. He turned toward Emma, his expression cold. This isn't over, Ranger. Meridian's legal team will prove our ownership rights. Those horses represent years of research and billions in potential medical advancements. Rodriguez stepped between them. Save it for court, Dr. Mercer. Right now, these animals are under federal protection. As the agents secured the scene, Emma turned back to the stable. She needed to prepare Phantom and Luna for what was coming. These past days had created a bond between them that she hadn't anticipated, one that would make saying goodbye far more difficult than she'd imagined. Inside the stable, Emma found Phantom standing protectively over Luna, both horses visibly distressed from the acoustic device's effects. When they saw her, their agitation lessened slightly, though Phantom's eyes remained alert, his powerful muscles tense beneath his white coat. It's okay, Emma soothed, approaching slowly. Those men can't hurt you anymore. She stroked Phantom's neck, feeling his racing pulse gradually slow beneath her touch. Luna pressed against her leg, seeking reassurance. The bond that had formed between them in these few days was profound, something Emma had never experienced with any animal, let alone wild ones. Agent Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, her expression softening as she observed the scene. I've never seen anything like this, she admitted. Wild horses allowing human contact so readily, especially after trauma. They're extraordinary, Emma agreed. Phantom brought Luna to me during the blizzard, seeking help for her injury. It wasn't random, it was deliberate. Rodriguez approached cautiously, maintaining a respectful distance. The preliminary DNA results show markers consistent with advanced selective breeding, focused on intelligence, healing capacity, and physical adaptability. Whatever Eleanor Silverstone was doing at her ranch, she was decades ahead of contemporary genetic science. Emma continued stroking Luna's neck, noticing how the wound had almost completely healed, far faster than should have been possible. What happens to them now? We have a specialized transport team arriving within the hour. They'll be taken to the Federal Genetic Wildlife Sanctuary in Wyoming, Rodriguez explained. It's not open to the public. It's designed specifically for animals with unique genetic characteristics that require protection from exploitation. Will they be safe there? Emma asked, unable to keep the concern from her voice. As safe as we can make them, Rodriguez replied honestly. But I won't sugarcoat this. Meridian Genetics has significant resources and powerful connections. They'll pursue legal channels to claim ownership based on their acquisition of Silverstone's patents and research. Emma felt a surge of protectiveness. Patents shouldn't apply to living creatures that have been wild for generations. I agree, and that's the position our legal team will take. The Genetic Heritage Conservation Act provides strong protection, but cases involving proprietary genetic research are complicated. Rodriguez paused. There's something else you should know. We believe there are more horses from this bloodline in the preserve. The mare that appeared earlier may not be the only one. This confirmed Emma's suspicions. How many do you think there are? Based on tracking data and reported sightings, we estimate a small herd, perhaps 8 to 10 individuals, all likely descended from Silverstone's original escaped horses. Rodriguez checked her watch. Our team is setting up perimeter surveillance to monitor for the others. If we can locate them, we'll need to bring them in as well for their protection. Emma considered this information. I think Phantom may be able to help with that. Rodriguez looked skeptical. You're suggesting using him to locate the others? Not exactly using him, Emma clarified. More like asking for his cooperation. I know it sounds strange, but these horses understand more than you'd think possible. Before Rodriguez could respond, Sarah appeared at the stable entrance, her expression a mixture of excitement and concern. Emma, they're saying the DNA results are unprecedented. The university lab wants to publish a paper on the findings. That's not happening, Rodriguez interjected firmly. All information regarding these animals is now classified under federal wildlife protection protocols. Your friend at the lab will need to sign confidentiality agreements. Sarah nodded, acknowledging the directive before turning back to Emma. What about Director Harmon? They arrested him for conspiracy and ethics violations. Good, Emma said with quiet satisfaction. The preserve director's betrayal of his conservation oath struck her as particularly egregious. Any word on the others involved? They're questioning several staff members, Sarah confirmed. Apparently, Meridian has been paying for information about wild horse sightings for years. They had people throughout the regional parks and preserve system. As they spoke, Phantom suddenly became alert, his ears pricking forward. Through the stable door, Emma could see more vehicles arriving, larger ones with specialized horse transport equipment. The time for goodbyes was approaching faster than she'd anticipated. Can I have a few minutes alone with them? Emma asked, her voice catching slightly. Rodriguez nodded with understanding. Of course. The transport team will need about 30 minutes to set up. I'll come get you when they're ready. When the others had left, Emma sat on a bale of hay, both horses gathering near her. Luna rested her head in Emma's lap while Phantom stood watch nearby, his intelligent eyes fixed on her face. I wish I could keep you both here, Emma said softly, stroking Luna's forelock. But those people won't stop trying to get you. The sanctuary will be safer. Phantom lowered his massive head, gently nudging Emma's shoulder. The gesture seemed so deliberate, so understanding, that Emma couldn't hold back her emotions any longer. Tears welled in her eyes as she wrapped her arms around the foal's neck. You changed everything when you came to my door that night, she whispered. I'll never forget you. Phantom nickered softly, a sound Emma had come to recognize as reassurance. Even now, facing separation, the stallion seemed to be comforting her rather than seeking comfort for himself. After what seemed like both an eternity and no time at all, Rodriguez returned. They're ready, she said gently. The loading process was handled with professional efficiency. The transport team had extensive experience with wildlife relocation and used minimal restraint, allowing Emma to lead both horses to the specialized trailer. Remarkably, neither Phantom nor Luna resisted. They seemed to understand the necessity of the journey, trusting Emma's guidance even in this final act. As the loading ramp was secured, one of the veterinary specialists approached Emma. I've never seen wild horses behave like this, she commented, especially not with their intelligence level. They're almost human, Emma suggested. I was going to say aware, the veterinarian clarified. They seem to understand what's happening around them at a level that's extraordinary. Rodriguez joined them, handing Emma an official card. This has the secure contact information for the sanctuary. You'll receive updates on their condition and status, though you'll need to sign confidentiality agreements first. Can I visit them? Emma asked. Rodriguez hesitated. It's complicated. The sanctuary's location is classified and access is extremely limited. But given your unique bond with these animals, she paused. I'll see what I can arrange. No promises. As the transport team made final preparations, Sarah approached with unexpected news. Emma, I just heard from Agent Rodriguez. They've offered you a position. A position? With the Fish and Wildlife Service Special Investigations Unit. They were impressed with how you handled the situation. Plus, your experience with these horses makes you uniquely qualified to assist with their protection program. Emma hadn't considered this possibility. Her career as a preserve ranger had always seemed like the perfect fit, but recent events had revealed corruption within the system she trusted. A change might be exactly what she needed, especially if it meant staying connected to Phantom and Luna's case. Before she could respond, the transport team signaled they were ready to depart. Emma walked to the trailer's small window, where Phantom's face was visible. Their eyes met one last time, and in that moment, Emma made her decision. "Tell Rodriguez I'm interested," she told Sarah. "Very interested." 3 months later, Emma stood at the edge of a vast meadow surrounded by snow-capped mountains. The Wyoming sanctuary sprawled across 5,000 protected acres, its location unmarked on any public map. Spring had arrived, bringing wildflowers and new growth to the landscape after the long winter. Emma adjusted her new uniform. The dark green of the Fish and Wildlife Service Special Investigations Unit looked similar to her old ranger uniform, but carried different weight and responsibility. "They're coming," said Dr. Helen Winters, the sanctuary's lead veterinarian and geneticist. "Watch the ridge." Emma lifted her binoculars, focusing on the distant hillside where movement had caught Dr. Winters' attention. Her heart leaped as a flash of white appeared against the green backdrop. Phantom, his powerful form unmistakable even at this distance. Behind him followed several other horses, including Luna, who had grown significantly in the past months. 8 individuals now, Dr. Winters noted, checking her tablet where tracking data was displayed. All confirmed to carry the Silverstone genetic markers, though Phantom and Luna show the strongest expression of the enhanced traits. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind for Emma. After accepting the position with the Special Investigations Unit, she had undergone accelerated training while remaining involved in the Silverstone horses case. Her unique experience with Phantom and Luna had made her an invaluable resource to the team working to protect and study these remarkable animals. In the weeks following the confrontation at the northern outpost, federal agents had located 6 more horses from Phantom's herd, all sharing the distinctive white coat and unusual intelligence. They had been gradually brought to the sanctuary where they lived in a protected semi-wild state, free to roam the extensive grounds but monitored by discreet technology and protected by robust security measures. "How's Luna's leg?" Emma asked, watching the young horse gallop effortlessly alongside the others. "Completely healed. No scarring, no loss of function," Dr. Winters replied. "We've documented her healing rate at approximately 300% faster than normal equines. It's unprecedented." The scientific discoveries regarding the Silverstone horses had been remarkable. Eleanor Silverstone, it turned out, had been a brilliant but secretive geneticist who had used techniques decades ahead of her time to selectively enhance certain traits in her breeding program. The horses' accelerated healing, exceptional intelligence, and physical adaptability weren't the result of genetic modification as initially suspected, but rather extraordinarily precise selective breeding combined with developmental conditioning that somehow activated latent genetic potential. "They're heading to the South Meadow," Dr. Winters observed. "Probably for the fresh spring grass. Would you like to meet them there?" Emma nodded, unable to hide her excitement. Although she received regular updates on the horse's condition, this was her first visit to the sanctuary since their relocation. Her new position had kept her busy investigating other wildlife trafficking cases, but this case remained close to her heart. As they drove toward the South Meadow in an electric utility vehicle, Dr. Winters updated Emma on the legal situation. Meridian's lawsuit is ongoing, but it's not going well for them. The court has consistently upheld the Genetic Heritage Conservation Act's protections. These horses have been wild for 15 years. Meridian's claim to proprietary genetic material doesn't hold up when applied to free-living animals and their offspring. "What about Mercer and the others?" Emma asked. "Facing multiple federal charges, and your former director, Harmon, has agreed to testify against Meridian in exchange for a reduced sentence." Dr. Winters smiled grimly. "Turns out he kept detailed records of every payment and communication. Not the brightest criminal." They parked at the edge of the meadow and continued on foot, moving quietly to avoid startling the horses. Emma felt her pulse quicken as they approached. Though she had faith in Dr. Winters' assurances that the horses were thriving, she needed to see for herself. The herd was spread across the meadow, grazing peacefully in the spring sunshine. Phantom, ever vigilant, was the first to notice their approach. His head lifted, ears pricked forward, eyes focusing intently on the visitors. Emma stopped walking, allowing him to make the choice to approach or retreat. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Phantom stood motionless, the breeze ruffling his magnificent white mane. Then, with deliberate steps, he began walking toward Emma. The other horses paused their grazing, watching with evident interest, but no fear. "I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Winters whispered. "Wild horses don't approach humans voluntarily, especially not after being relocated. Their memory and recognition abilities are extraordinary." Emma remained still, her heart pounding as Phantom closed the distance between them. When he was just a few feet away, he stopped, his dark, intelligent eyes studying her face. Emma slowly raised her hand, palm open. "Hello, old friend," she said softly. Phantom stretched his neck forward and gently pressed his muzzle against her palm, the same gesture of trust he had shown that first night in the blizzard. Emotion welled in Emma's throat as she stroked his face, noticing the subtle changes in his appearance. He looked healthier, his coat gleaming with vitality, his powerful body even more impressive in this open setting. A movement to her right caught Emma's attention, Luna trotting toward them, no sign of limping or discomfort in her gait. The young horse had grown significantly in 3 months, her frame filling out with adolescent development. She approached without hesitation, bumping Emma's shoulder affectionately with her head. "They remember you," Dr. Winters said, clearly amazed. "This level of recognition and social memory, it's beyond what we thought possible." Emma spent the next hour with the herd, observing their interactions and behavior while Dr. Winters took notes. The horses' social structure was complex and clearly hierarchical, with Phantom as the undisputed leader. Yet their interactions showed subtlety and nuance that suggested communication beyond typical equine behavior. "We've documented over 30 distinct vocalizations and body language signals unique to this herd," Dr. Winters explained. "They're communicating in ways we're just beginning to understand. It's like they've developed their own dialect." As the afternoon light began to fade, Emma reluctantly prepared to leave. Her visit was brief. Security protocols at the sanctuary limited even official access. But it had confirmed what she needed to know. Phantom, Luna, and the others were safe and thriving in their new home. Before departing, Emma had one more question for Dr. Winters. "What happens next with the research? I know there's enormous scientific interest in their genetics." Dr. Winters nodded thoughtfully. "That's the balance we're trying to strike. These horses represent a significant advancement in our understanding of genetic potential and adaptive intelligence. The medical applications alone, especially regarding accelerated healing, could benefit millions." She paused, watching the horses grazing peacefully. "But they're living beings, not laboratory specimens. Our mandate is to protect them first, study them second, and always with their welfare as the priority." Emma felt reassured by this approach. Her new position with the Special Investigations Unit would allow her to remain involved in the horses' protection, ensuring that the exploitation Meridian had planned would never happen. As they walked back to the vehicle, Emma glanced over her shoulder one last time, Phantom stood watching her, his white form luminous in the golden afternoon light, Luna beside him. The image reminded her powerfully of that snowy night when they had first appeared at her cabin door. Two remarkable beings seeking shelter in a storm. But now they were no longer seeking refuge. They were home, protected, their future secured through the actions of those who had recognized their value not just as genetic marvels, but as extraordinary living creatures worthy of protection. Emma smiled, raising her hand in a final farewell. Phantom lifted his head, seeming to acknowledge the gesture. No words were needed between them. Some connections transcended language, existing in a realm of mutual respect and understanding that defied conventional explanation. As the sanctuary disappeared behind her during the drive back to headquarters, Emma reflected on the strange path that had brought her here. One snowy night, an unexpected knock at her door had changed everything, not just for her, but for science, for conservation, and for our understanding of what was possible when nature was allowed to reveal its most extraordinary secrets. The wild horses that had begged a forest ranger for shelter had indeed surprised everyone, not with magic or supernatural abilities, but with the remarkable potential that had existed within nature all along, waiting to be discovered, protected, and cherished for generations to come.